Okay, so let's dive into something kind of paradoxical. We're going to look at a place where a core belief of a major religion clashes head on with hundreds of years of tradition. We're talking about the promise of equality in Buddhism versus the hard reality of the caste system. And this right here, this is the ideal. It's a quote from the Buddha himself. Think about it. In a world where your birth pretty much decided your whole life, he comes along and says, nope, it's what you do that matters, not who your parents were. I mean, that's a revolutionary idea, right? It's basically saying the whole concept of caste doesn't matter. So that begs the question, doesn't it? Is that beautiful idea actually how things work in practice? To figure that out, we're going to zoom in on one specific place, a really fascinating and complicated one, Sri Lanka. You know, this promise of equality, it's a huge deal. It's precisely why famous figures like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the Indian social reformer, looked to Buddhism. For him, it was a way out, an escape hatch from the super rigid Hindu caste system. But, and this is the big but, our source material shows us a totally different picture in Sri Lanka. That message of equality, it smacks right into a wall of a deeply, deeply rooted caste system. And not just in one community, but even within the majority Sinhala Buddhist population. Okay, so how does this whole system actually look on the ground? What's the structure within the Sinhala community? Well, it's definitely not simple. It's this really detailed, multi-layered social hierarchy. It's a pretty clear pyramid, you could say. You've got dozens of different castes, and each one was traditionally linked to a specific job. So way up at the top, you have the Radala. Think of them as the old landed aristocracy. Right below them are the Govigama, the farmer caste, who are super powerful. And from there, it goes all the way down through different jobs, right to the Rodiya, who were historically seen as outcasts. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at the numbers. The Govigama caste, they're not just some small elite group. They make up roughly half of the entire Sinhala population. And when you have that kind of demographic weight, you can bet it comes with a ton of political and economic clout. And this isn't just, some abstract social theory. It has real-world consequences. Right at the top, a perfect example, is former Prime Minister Sirima Bandaranaike. She was from that highest Radala caste. It just goes to show you that direct line between high caste status and holding the highest political office in the country. So you have to ask, right? Where did this all come from? How did a caste system get so baked into a Buddhist culture that on paper should totally reject it? Well, the answer seems to lie in a shared history with South India. The roots go back to the Hindu social hierarchy, known as Varnashrama Dharma. Basically, the theory is that when people migrated from South India over to the island, they brought their social baggage with them. They didn't just leave those structures behind. Those systems got carried over, adapted, and woven into the fabric of the new culture. And you can see the proof pretty clearly. A lot of the big Sinhala castes, particularly the ones along the coast, have these direct lines back to communities from places like Tamil Nadu and Kerala in India. You've got the Kaurava, the fisher caste, the Durava, the toddy tappers. You can trace their origins right back to the subcontinent. It's fascinating. Okay, but the story doesn't end with social life or politics. It gets even more complicated. The influence of caste actually goes somewhere you would absolutely not expect to find it. Inside the Buddhist monasteries. Right into the heart of the religious orders themselves. And this, folks, is where the contradiction just becomes glaring. Yeah, you heard that right. This is the absolute key point of this whole explainer. Caste isn't just some social issue happening outside the temple walls. It is formally, officially, structured into the national Buddhist monastic community, the Sangha. So you've got these three main monastic groups. They're called Nikayas. And get this, they were basically founded along caste lines. The biggest and most powerful one, the Siam Nikaya, will only ordain monks from the high-status Govigama caste. So what happened? Well, other castes like the Kaurava and Salagama had to go and form their own separate orders, the Amarapura and Ramanana Nikayas, just to be able to have their own monks. The implications of this are huge. It means that access to the highest levels of religious authority, control over some of the most sacred sites and relics in all of Buddhism, like the famous Temple of the Tooth in Kandy, is literally restricted based on who your parents were. It's an institutionalized contradiction of the Buddha's most basic teachings. And just to be clear, this is not some new development. We're talking ancient history here. Historical texts tell us just how far back this goes. There's a story about a legendary king's son way back in the 2nd century BCE who was basically shunned for marrying a woman from a lower caste. That's over 2,000 years ago. Okay, so fast forward to today. What does this all look like in modern Sri Lanka? How does this ancient system actually operate in the 21st century, where you have this constant tension between the religious ideal and the social reality? Well, on the surface, you might not notice it right away. There's no official segregation, you know? Kids from all castes go to the same schools, people can go into the same temples. But once you scratch beneath the surface, you see the influence is still incredibly powerful, especially in the areas that really matter, like who you marry and who you vote for. And here's a final, almost unbelievable piece of irony. Remember Dr. Ambedkar from the beginning? The man who saw Buddhism as the great escape from caste? Well, the Sri Lankan monk who was a major inspiration for his conversion was part of this very caste-based system. It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? If Ambedkar had known the full story, the full reality of how caste worked inside Sri Lankan Buddhism, would he still have made that choice? So, where does that leave us? After digging into all this, what's the big takeaway here? What can we really learn from this fascinating, and let's be honest, kind of troubling story? You know, this isn't so much a story about a religion failing. It's more a story about just how powerful culture and social structures can be. It shows that sometimes a religious ideal doesn't reshape a society. The society reshapes the religion to fit its own structure. And in the end, what we see in Sri Lanka is really a snapshot of a universal tension, right? It's a conflict that plays out in different forms all over the world, which really leaves us with a big final question to think about.